Welcome back again, and you're now looking at the storyteller. That's what the people call me, and somehow or other I can't resist doing it. They get me started about all my adventures and all the things I've had during the World War II, during the Korea time, running a small airline, instructing and all. In fact, I've often said that flight instructing was probably the worst business in the world. It's the only one where your customer tries to kill you every hour. And so I was so happy when we finally got out of flight instructing. But at the time I had the military contracts for Akron U, ROTC, Army and Air Force, Kent State University, Army and Air Force. So we had many pilots flying out of the Akron Municipal Airport. Many of them went on into the Air Force, became pilots. One general, many colonels, a couple of guys became chief pilots at Goodyear, chief pilots at big other corporations around the country. So actually we turned out some good pilots. But let's get back to, it's coming up Christmas. So here is a Christmas story. And this I heard in a pilot lounge. And believe me, there's a lot of stories, war stories, all kinds of stories are heard sitting in a pilot lounge. Because you've got guys from World War II, for Korea, airline pilot, everybody's sitting there. And they do tell the stories. So I thought before these are lost, I'd better write them down. And the one I'm going to tell you right now happened during the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. And the story was told by a P-47 fighter pilot who took part in the Battle of the Bulge. And his unit was on the fringe of the bad weather. This was in December 1945, I believe it was, when the Germans had one last big offensive. And they massed everything, the kids, 14, 15-year-old soldiers, and they made a big push against the Allied forces. And he caught them all by surprise because it was Christmas Eve. Well, the weather was bad, so the word came down, they suspended all flying for the American forces because all the fighting on the ground was between just separate units, tourist patrols and all, because they couldn't see what they were doing. So then the call came in, well, these pilots then planned a great Christmas party. They had it set up with some of the Spitfire pilots that bring in a busload of French girls. They had, the squadron commander went around, he somehow scrounged up a case of fine Scotch whiskey. So they all went to work on this and came up with hams, and they also had a French jazz band coming in, and they promised the guy a couple of Mickey Mouse watches. Mickey Mouse watches were good currency during the war. And if you could sell them to the Russians, they're worth $200 if you could get Russians with American money. Anyway, so these guys were all set to have the party. And what happens? They get a call from the Central Force that a company of Americans were trapped. And a German armored cavalry, an armored bunch of tanks and weapons carriers were descending on them and trapping these guys, yet we had an armored force heading up that way, but they wouldn't get there in time to save the American platoon. So the commander said that since you fellas are on the edge of the bad weather, and you could still fly to get there before anybody else. So that was the end of the Christmas party. This is Christmas Eve. So the squadron commander and group commander, they called for volunteers the old military way, you, and you. So that was the Christmas party. These guys went out and they strafed and bombed this German column. And they destroyed tanks, they halted them, they saved that platoon that was in danger of being captured and massacred, because that was a Panzer division coming in. And it was vicious fighting then. That they gave time, and then even when they ran out of bombs and ammunition, they kept harassing the tanks, flying low over them. So by then, they held them back and they destroyed enough that the American Armored Force was able to come in and rescue this platoon. Then these tired pilots went back. They're all set to have their Christmas party. And who was standing there greeting them in the day room was the chaplain. And he said, "Oh, boys, for your party, the French jazz band got tired of waiting. The hams I donated to the orphanage. And those Spitfire pilots took the French girls back home, back to Paris." And he said, "And also the whiskey, well, I donated that away too, because you flyers shouldn't have that sort of thing around." And these guys were all set for a big party. And he says, "But don't worry, I've got a lot of, I made fruit juice and canned juice and all." He said, "We've got cookies, we even have a cake, and we're going to sing Christmas carols. We'll have a lovely time." So they all happened. The tired pilots went to bed, but before they did, they all agreed to everybody that, they had one of the best Christmas Eves ever, because they saved these guys, and they told the chaplain also, that was really their best Christmas party we ever had. So that's one of the stories I had out of World War II, told by this old fighter pilot flying a P-47. He's been gone for a good while now, and every Christmas I think about this guy and that party and how the best Christmas Eve they ever had during the Battle of the Bulge. Oh, back again with another story. This is from Whiskey Strip. And this happened years ago when I was operating out of Akron Municipal Airport. And I had a charter call to fly down to Kentucky to pick up a gentleman who just passed away. The family didn't tell me that he weighed about 280 pounds. And I was in a small twin-engine Piper Apache. And so I'd taken the one seat out. I didn't want to use a single-engine airplane that had a bigger door because the weather was bad. The weather was bad at Akron, bad in Kentucky. So when I got down to Kentucky, the hearse came out with the body, and there were 3 guys there to help load this guy in the airplane. So I'm always in the airplane doing the stoop labor there because I have to guide the stretcher and all. And with this 280-pound guy, we had a hard time getting him in. So we finally got him in. I said, "Boy, these folks never told me this is a big guy." And I said, "I hope when I get to Akron, I got some help getting this guy out." So we took off, headed to Akron, made the approach, and the rain was just torrential. The ramp there, the water was just pouring into the drains. So I pulled up near the waiting hearse at the terminal building. Nobody was around, and it was just almost dark. Pulled up, and who gets out of the hearse but a skinny old man and a skinny kid? I said, "I'm in trouble." So we get in there, I get inside the airplane. I had the other 2 standing outside in the water, just sloshing water up to their ankles. It was raining so hard. So we got the guy maneuvered through the door, and I said, "Now hang on to him." And I lifted him up a bit, lifted my end of the stretcher up. And these guys, the kid stumbled, and he lost the grip, and the old man stumbled also, and they fell into the water. And here my passenger was on a stretcher at an angle, and he slipped right out of the sheet. They always transported people in sheets unless they're put into a casket. So this gentleman slipped right out from underneath the sheet and hit the water at a slope. And there's a drain, really a big drain. The water was just pouring into it. And he actually surfed for a few feet and got stuck on the drain. And I yelled, "Get him!" And the kid says, "Get him yourself, I quit." So me and the old man, I jumped out into the water. We helped the man, got him back onto the stretcher, and looked around and said, "Thank heaven nobody saw this." we got the guy with much struggling onto the gurney, got him into the hearse, and the way it went. So I call that story my surfing passengers.